HQ presented by Capital One. This is Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft. Just did the top 10 for us here. And this is based on draft order if everything ended today. So the Panthers would get the top pick with the worst record. And how about that? Bama players going back-to-back 1-2. Bryce Young 1 to the Panthers, Will Anderson 2 to the Raiders, and then Will Levis 3 to Kentucky, followed by CJ Stroud to the Texans. Will Levis obviously out of Kentucky to the Detroit Lions. Let's go through this with Ryan Wilson, who thought he was going to be doing fewer mock drafts this season. That's just for the website. We're making you continue to do mock drafts each and every week here on CBS Sports HQ. And Ryan, Bryce Young first. That was raising my eyebrows just a little bit when I saw it because I haven't seen him first in many of your mocks. Have you had him first at all in any of them?
No, and you're right, Chris, because when you and I talk about this, typically Bryce Young's a little further down, and your questions always are, can Bryce Young move up? And clearly he can. And I'll just say this, NFL teams aren't as high on Bryce Young as NFL media folks are. And I did this because we talk about it every week, but also because he's really, really, really good. Now, he played out of his mind last week in that loss to Tennessee. 52-49, I think, was the total score in that game. So they were putting up points on both sides. But the issue is, and you know this, you could probably tell me this, he's undersized. Durability is a concern. He missed the previous game because of that shoulder injury. I don't think that's a function of him weighing under 200 pounds. I think it's a function of him just playing football and getting hurt, which happens to virtually everyone who takes the field. But I love everything about his game. Some teams have some concerns in the league about his pre-snap recognition. He's gotten a lot better with that since last season. And for me, if he's 6'2" and 210 pounds, he's probably the first overall pick. Unfortunately, he's probably going to be shorter than 6 feet, probably going to be lighter than 200 pounds, and then it'll be up to the team that drafts him. But I can tell you this, Carolina currently has the number 1 overall pick based on how poorly they played, and their current quarterback is not on the roster, and you can almost guarantee that their quarterback to start next year will be their first pick in this draft. So this week I went with Bryce Young based on the way he played last week and based on the way he played this season. He's had a great season today.
He's slight of frame, one of the reasons why some don't believe he's going to be a number 1 or number 2 overall pick. Will Levis is the biggest, the most put together of the more Josh Allen-like, I guess, of the quarterbacks in next year's draft. You have him going to the Lions. Are the Lions going to take a quarterback in your mind 100%? You would think that going in, but Jared Goff has played well.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm not convinced that the Lions will move off of Jared Goff for the reasons you lay out, Chris. He has played well this year. He played surprisingly well last year. And, the expectation was coming from Sean McVay and that Rams offense was that he was going to go straight in the tank, and it was just the opposite. So credit to him. And this is just sort of, a thought exercise. I don't know if the Lions would go in this direction. They might want to bolster a defense that we can all admit has been decidedly terrible through the first 6 or 7 weeks of this NFL season. But if you're going with a quarterback, Will Levis' name is going to be in the mix. And I told you this last week, along with Anthony Richardson, this is going to be the Mac Jones of this draft class. People get angry when you bring up Will Levis' name because he doesn't light up the scoreboard week in and week out. Doesn't help that he plays behind an offensive line that hasn't really come together yet in Kentucky. He's been injured. He missed a game against South Carolina in which the Wildcats lost. But you said it, Chris. He has a lot of Josh Allen in his game, and from the physical passing the eye test standpoint. And when NFL teams look at Will Levis, they're projecting 2, 3, 4 years down the line, and they like a lot of what they see because of those physical traits and because he's so incredibly smart. And look, you roll the dice, and if you get 65% of Josh Allen, that's worth the pick if he's your quarterback for the next 10 years.
CJ Stroud, we saw the Heisman numbers, and we also saw the odds to go number 1. Stroud is the Heisman favorite. He's the favorite to go number 1 right now. Why do you have him falling down to the Texans in this one at number 4?
Yeah, so it's just about what flavor of ice cream you like if you're the team picking the quarterback, right? So that's the situation here. Last week when we spoke, I had C.J. Stroud, I think, going first overall to the Panthers, and the one thing that we can rely on is that the Panthers will be, in fact, taking the quarterback. So why is C.J. Stroud 4? That's just how this thing fell out based on how Bryce Young played this week and the NFL's infatuation, if you will, with Will Levis. The question for me is, we talked about it with the Jared Goff and the Lions, will the Texans be looking to move on from Davis Mills? The difference is Davis Mills does some things well, but in terms of the advanced metrics, he's been at the bottom of the league in terms of value per play among all the quarterbacks. Jared Goff is top 15. So if this new regime in Houston with Nick Caserio as the general manager wants to go in a different direction besides the third-round pick Davis Mills. C.J. Stroud will be there for the taking. I think C.J. Stroud is better than Justin Fields at this point in his college career. Justin Fields has obviously struggled in a bad situation in Chicago, but I think there's an opportunity for C.J. Stroud to be a really good player if you can build that infrastructure around him. Make it like Ohio State, and there's a guarantee that you're going to win 11 football games every year.
Things laying out nicely for Houston right now because they have that pick from Cleveland, which would be the number 6 overall pick. Tell us about the offensive lineman you have them taking to protect Stroud with.
Right, so you get quarterback, and then 2 picks later at 6, you get Olafashanu out of Penn State. And here's the thing, Chris, I've talked to scouts that don't love the idea of talking up 19 and 20-year-olds at this point in the draft process because it can sometimes take their decision-making once we get around to the draft. And I get that. But this kid out of Penn State is special. Every time you watch him play, it's impossible to believe that he's only 19 or 20 years old. Every single game, he is where he needs to be. He's stout at the point of attack. He controls speed rushers. He controls power rushers. He's a beast in the running game, and he could very easily end up being offensive tackle 1 off the board. I say that in the middle of October. A lot has to happen between now in late April, but he has been a special player through the first half of the college football season.
Philadelphia Eagles also have a top pick in this scenario because they have a pick from the New Orleans Saints, who are 2-4 out of the gate and playing tonight against the Cardinals. Eagles, you go defensive line here. Is that because of the player who was on the board for you? Is that filling some kind of a need for Philadelphia?
Right, you look at the roster, and there's no way on planet Earth that the Philadelphia Eagles need to upgrade their defensive line. But here's the thing. At the end of the season, Fletcher Cox, who's 31, and Javon Hargrave, who they signed as free agent a few years ago and has played really well, will both be at the end of their contracts. So if it's the case that the Eagles want to continue to bolster that front 7, and they love having dominant defensive tackles, Jalen Carter, he makes a lot of sense. Now, if he lasts till 5, that will also be a minor miracle. The quarterbacks will certainly push him down, but he is special, and so special, in fact, and Prisco talked about this a lot during the last draft cycle, that he might have been the best defensive player on that team. And that also included Jordan Davis, who, as it turns out, currently plays for the Eagles. So imagine a reunion of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis in the middle of that defense, especially if they don't re-sign Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave. And it's not going to get any easier for the rest of the NFC East. He is an absolute animal. He struggled with injuries at a point this year. He had an ankle injury, missed a little time. But when he's healthy, he's just about unstoppable. Cardinals
have the 9th pick in your mock draft. They seem to have a lot of needs, and you go with cornerback Keely Ringo.
Yeah, as we sit here, he's going to be in the mix for CB1. And, I gave some thought, Chris, do you want to take a Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs here? It seems like every year we're trying to give the Arizona Cardinals a running back. But here you see Ringo making a play on Tank Bigsby, another running back who's going to be mixed out of Auburn. He's physical, and look, you cannot say enough how incredibly important it is to be a physical cornerback coming down and run support in the NFL. But he's also really good in coverage. He's long. He's athletic. He does all the things that these big, strong corners do in today's NFL. And the transition when you're playing in the SEC is sometimes a lot easier if you're playing in lesser divisions in college football. So I think there's an opportunity for the Cardinals to get better on defense, although you could argue they need to get better just about everywhere except for maybe quarterback with Kyler Murray.
You had Anthony Richardson in the top 3, I think, the last time we talked to you. We've seen him anywhere from 1 to 10. And you have him going in this latest mock draft because we had you going a little bit past 10.
Yeah, he slips to 12. And again, it's just a numbers game. We'll see what happens with Anthony Richardson in terms of whether he decides to return to Florida or what his professional pursuits are in the near term. I say it all the time. He is a special player, he lacks a ton of experience, not just a little bit, a lot. So it just depends on how long you're willing to wait. With that said, I have him going to Washington at number 12. Carson Wentz, unfortunately, appears not to be working out. A lot of us thought that might be the trajectory of his career once he got to Washington. Taylor Heinicke's going to play this week. They did draft Sam Howell in the 5th round. He looked good in preseason, but it doesn't appear he's going to be in line to play unless Taylor Heinicke gets hurt. So all that said, if Washington wants to upgrade the quarterback position, I think Anthony Richardson or any of these other 3 quarterbacks we talked about are certainly going to be in the mix around number 12 here if that's where they end up selecting.
So did you just stop at 12 there, Ryan, or are there more hidden picks that we don't know about?
I did 7 rounds, but only turned in the top 15 picks, Chris.
7-round mock. I'm sure you did. Ryan Wilson with us here with an exclusive HQ mock draft we'll get from him each and every Thursday. You can hear him on the Pick Six podcast, but not the latest one, though, because that's Will Brinson and Brady Quinn discussing the top storylines of the week, including a Thursday night football preview, Saints Cards, and also that Jerry Jones and Roger Goodell beef.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.